Imagine facing 27 shots from a South American powerhouse on the absolute biggest sporting stage on Earth.
Yeah, just wave after wave of relentless, coordinated attacks.
Right. Now imagine doing all of that when your last official professional match was nearly a year ago.
Oh, and your former club went bankrupt.
Exactly. And your primary training regimen involved playing a local racket sport.
I mean, it sounds like the setup to a goofy sports comedy, honestly.
Totally. But the biomechanical and, well, the psychological reality of how this actually happened is so much more fascinating than fiction.
It really is.
So, welcome to the deep dive. We are handing you the ultimate underdog story today. You might think you know what a sporting miracle looks like, but wait until you hear how this one was engineered.
Yeah, today's mission is to basically unpack the mechanics of an impossible performance.
We have a whole stack of match reports, historical data, and player interviews that map out exactly how Eloy Room and the Curacao national team pulled off this historic 0-0 draw against Ecuador.
A draw that claimed their first ever World Cup point, by the way.
Right. So to really grasp the magnitude of this, we need to place you inside Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City during the 2026 World Cup.
Yeah, the visual contrast alone tells the story. Arrowhead holds roughly 76,000 people.
And that day, it was just a suffocating sea of yellow. I mean, Ecuador fans packed the stadium literally to the rafters.
But then, scattered in that overwhelming yellow sea, you have these tiny, defiant pockets of blue.
Representing Curacao. And for context, for those who don't know, Curacao is an island nation with a total population of about 150,000 people.
Right, so Eloy Room, their 37-year-old goalkeeper, is standing on a pitch facing a hostile crowd that basically equals half the population of his entire country.
Which is just wild to think about.
It is, and that environmental pressure is crucial to understand. Because before we trace the decade-long journey of how Room even got to this tournament, we have to dissect the sheer scale of what happened on the pitch in those 90 minutes.
Right, because we are looking at statistical immortality here.
Exactly. Depending on which official report you consult, Ecuador unleashed either 27 or 28 shots.
And the onslaught started instantly. I mean, in the opening 2 minutes, Ecuador's veteran striker, Ener Valencia, gets a point-blank look at the goal.
Oh, yeah. It's the kind of chance a striker of his caliber buries 99 times out of 100.
It really should have been the goal that just opened the floodgates.
But it wasn't.
Yeah.
Because Room anticipates the strike, dives to his left, and physically turns it away.
Wow.
And mechanically speaking, that single reflex action rewired the psychology of the entire match. Room actually stated in post-match interviews that after making that specific high-difficulty save so early, he just felt unbeatable.
Which sounds like classic athlete bravado, right?
You'd think so, but it's a documented psychological phenomenon.
Sure.
Early, successful, high-stakes interventions can actually trigger a state of flow.
Well, he certainly locked into that flow state because Ecuador's coach, Sebastian Becasese, spent the rest of the match on the sidelines looking completely paralyzed.
Oh, he was totally bewildered. He literally told the press afterward, like, there are things you cannot explain in football. We had 27 shots on goal, but we couldn't score.
And the official numbers back up that bewilderment. Some match reports logged 15 saves. FIFA's official statistics actually cite 16 saves.
Yeah, and regardless of a one-save discrepancy, we are talking about a performance that just breaks historical models.
Okay, wait, I need to stop you there and challenge the premise of this stat.
Go for it.
Because when I look at a number like 16 saves, my first thought is, was Ecuador just taking terrible low percentage shots directly at his chest?
Ah, I see what you mean.
Right. I mean, if you are bailing out a sinking ship with a thimble, eventually the physics of the water overwhelm you. So is a 16 save performance genuinely that absurd, or did Ecuador just execute poorly?
No, it is genuinely that absurd, and here's why. Since saves became an officially tracked World Cup statistic back in 1966, this is the highest number of saves recorded by any goalkeeper in regulation time.
Wow. Any goalkeeper ever.
Ever in regulation time. He surpassed Peru's Ramon Quiroga, who managed 13 saves back in 1978.
Wait, hold on. What about Tim Howard's legendary game for the USA against Belgium in 2014? I thought he had 16 saves.
He did, but the crucial variable there is time.
Okay.
Tim Howard needed 120 minutes, so a full match plus 30 minutes of extra time to reach 16 saves. Eloy Room achieved that exact same number in a standard 90-minute window.
Oh, wow. That completely changes the context.
Right.
It's basically the difference between running a marathon where you are allowed to take scheduled water breaks and being forced to sprint the entire 26 miles without stopping once.
That is a perfect analogy. The neurological fatigue alone should have caused a catastrophic mistake.
I mean, facing a dangerous shot every 5.5 minutes means your brain literally never gets to power down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're experiencing constant, draining spikes of adrenaline without any recovery periods.
And sustaining that superhuman reflex rate for 90 minutes is usually the result of like elite million-dollar club facilities and highly calibrated sports science programs.
Which is exactly what makes it completely baffling that Room's primary training facility leading up to this tournament was, well, unconventional.
Yeah, we will definitely get to his bizarre training methods in a moment.
Yeah.
Because you don't endure that kind of neurological and physical torture without a profound underlying motivation.
No, absolutely not.
A performance like that doesn't just spawn from a vacuum. To understand the emotional architecture holding up those 16 saves, we really have to look back a full decade.
Yeah, because Eloy Room didn't just walk onto this team. He had to build it from the ground up.
So let's rewind to 2015. Curacao was basically a footballing ghost at that point.
Yeah, they'd only become a recognized FIFA member in 2011. There was no institutional infrastructure, no pipeline of world-class talent, and zero track record on the international stage.
They were starting from absolute zero.
Enter Patrick Kluivert. The legendary Dutch striker takes the coaching job for Curacao in 2015, and his very first move is to pick up the phone and call Eloy Room.
Which is wild because at that specific moment, Room was a rising talent born in the Netherlands.
Right, he was actively playing in the Dutch under-20 setup, basically waiting for a call-up to the senior Netherlands squad.
But when Kluivert pitched the idea of representing his father's homeland, Room made a decision that altered the trajectory of the entire nation.
He really did. Room said it himself later, like, I was basically the first player who switched nationalities back then.
But he didn't just switch the crest on his shirt, right? He basically became the team's unauthorized general manager.
Yeah, he started calling up all his friends. He pitches his teammate Jurgen Locadia on this grand vision of taking this tiny island to the World Cup.
And Locadia is actually on record admitting that his initial reaction was, come on, man, it's not realistic.
Which is a completely rational response. Suggesting Curacao could qualify for a World Cup in 2015 was statistically laughable.
It's identical to a tech startup founder trying to secure millions in venture capital when they have no product, zero revenue, and not even a prototype.
Right.
You are running on pure delusion, fueled entirely by the stories of the island your father, Leslie, told you growing up.
But that connection to the soil is the engine of the entire operation. It introduces this psychological concept of diaspora motivation.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Well, this wasn't about securing a massive paycheck or elevating their individual market value. It was about proving the existence and the validity of a people.
I hear that, but motivation only goes so far when reality punches you in the mouth.
True.
How does a player maintain that level of startup delusion for an entire decade, especially considering that just days before this miraculous 0-0 draw with Ecuador, this exact same Curacao team played Germany and got systematically dismantled?
Oh, the 7-1 loss.
Yeah, 7-1. If my startup loses all its funding and gets sued, I'm probably going to quit. How do you keep the dream alive after a 7-1 humiliation?
Well, because that loss didn't shatter their core objective, it clarified it.
Really? How so?
When your goal is to validate your identity on the global stage, a 7-1 loss to a giant like Germany acts as a crucible. It burns away the ego.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, Room explicitly stated after that Germany match that the team was desperate to show the world who they really were. The humiliation was exactly the tactical wake-up call they needed.
So it forced them to abandon any illusions of playing expansive attacking football.
Exactly. And instead focus entirely on a hardened defensive survival instinct against Ecuador.
And that survival instinct brings us to the most jarring, completely counterintuitive part of this entire deep dive.
Here we go.
Sustaining that instinct usually requires a player to be at the absolute peak of their professional club career, but the path Eloy Room took to that pitch in Kansas City was incredibly isolated.
Yeah, he wasn't playing in the Premier League.
He wasn't even playing.
The timeline is staggering, honestly. Let's look at the decisive November 2025 World Cup qualifier against Jamaica. Curacao is 90 minutes away from achieving their impossible dream. And their starting goalkeeper, their recruiter, their spiritual leader, Doesn't even have an employer.
Right, because his former club in the Netherlands, Vitesse, had collapsed into bankruptcy.
Yep.
He tried a short stint at Cercle Brugge in Belgium, but that quickly dissolved. So his last professional club match before the World Cup was a Belgian Cup game all the way back in December 2024.
Which means he went nearly a full calendar year without playing a competitive professional club match before the biggest tournament of his life.
It is unbelievable. So if you are an unemployed goalkeeper locked out of the professional club system, how do you train for the FIFA World Cup?
You piece it together yourself. He hired a personal trainer for the gym, found a goalkeeper coach for pitch work, and to keep his reflexes sharp, he played padel.
Okay, to be absolutely clear for you listening, we are talking about the racket sport.
Yes, padel.
A 37-year-old man preparing to face elite South American strikers by hitting a ball against a glass wall with a racket.
I know.
He even told an interviewer that padel is full of reflexes and cardio and that it worked for him. But I have to dig into the mechanics of this with you. Why on earth would a racket sport translate to stopping 27 shots in a World Cup?
It actually makes brilliant biomechanical sense when you break it down.
Really?
Yeah. Padel is played in a tiny enclosed glass court where the ball ricochets at aggressive, unnatural angles.
Okay, I'm tracking.
In top-tier football, standard shots from a distance are somewhat predictable, right? A goalkeeper can read the striker's hips and track the trajectory.
Sure.
But in a World Cup siege, where the penalty box is crowded with 20 bodies, the ball is constantly deflecting. Padel basically forces the brain to process chaotic deflections in milliseconds.
Oh, wow. So he was essentially rewiring his neural pathways to react purely to chaos.
Exactly.
Okay, so the padel court prepared his eyes. But what about his mind? Let's go back to that November qualifier against Jamaica.
Oh, this moment is incredible.
The score is 0-0 in the dying minutes, and the referee points to the spot. A penalty kick for Jamaica. If Jamaica scores, the World Cup dream is dead.
And Room casually turns to the referee and says, "It doesn't matter if you give the penalty, I'll save it anyway."
The audacity of that statement is just breathtaking.
It really is.
Now, the VAR ended up overturning the penalty, so he never had to physically back up the trash talk. But the sheer arrogant swagger to say that with your nation's history on the line, it makes me wonder about the psychology of his unemployment.
What do you mean?
Well, I'm looking at this timeline, and I can't help but wonder if getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to him. Does being clubless and totally isolated actually give an athlete a weird psychological edge?
Like having absolutely nothing to lose.
Yeah, like did being isolated protect him from the classic World Cup burnout?
You've hit on a fascinating concept here. The advantage of isolation. Consider the typical top-tier footballer arriving at a World Cup. They have just ground through a grueling 9-month domestic season. They are carrying micro-injuries, dealing with toxic club politics, exhausting travel schedules, and relentless media scrutiny every single week.
They are running on fumes before the tournament even starts.
Exactly. They arrive at the international stage neurologically depleted. But Room was entirely removed from that toxic ecosystem.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Without the physical toll of weekly club football, he controlled his own environment. He could hyper-focus his mind and body on one singular microscopic goal, the national team.
He wasn't burned out.
No, he was rested, primed, and operating with a clear head. He stated, "I knew what to focus on. I knew we had another game."
That isolation didn't rust his abilities. It sharpened them into a weapon.
He stripped away all the noise until the only thing left was the ball.
Perfectly said.
He did eventually sign with the U.S. second-tier side Miami FC at age 36, just a month after that Jamaica game, which finally gave him some competitive minutes right before Kansas City.
But that decade of hyper-focus, the chaotic paddle preparation, the startup-style recruiting, it all detonated the second the referee blew the final whistle against Ecuador.
And the contrast of emotions inside that stadium the moment the match ended is one of the most compelling aspects of this entire story.
Let's paint the picture of the immediate aftermath for a second. On the sidelines, you have Curaçao's coach, Dick Advocate. He is the oldest manager at the tournament.
Yeah, and this is a man who had actually temporarily stepped down months prior due to his daughter's severe health concerns.
The emotional weight he was carrying was immense. And at the final whistle, this grizzled veteran manager is just openly weeping, telling the press that his players fought like lions.
And while the manager was weeping on the sidelines, A surreal, almost cinematic scene is unfolding down in the locker room.
I love this part.
King Willem-Alexander and Queen Maxima of the Netherlands, who had been watching from the stands, come down to personally congratulate the team.
It is an incredible image. Room, the diaspora athlete who grew up in the Dutch youth system, actually gets a congratulatory kiss from the Queen of the Netherlands for securing a historic point for a former Dutch colony.
You literally cannot script a more surreal, full-circle moment.
And he handled the surreal nature of it perfectly.
He really did.
Because while the royal visit is happening in the physical world, online, Room is logging on to Reddit.
Of course he is.
He is in the threads joking around saying, I think I need a statue in Curacao now. And someone in the comments pointed out that the African nation of Cape Verde recently painted a massive mural for their goalkeeper after a big tournament. So maybe Room isn't actually joking about the statue.
Honestly, given the statistical impossibility of what he achieved, a statue in the capital of Willemstad is entirely justified.
But I want you to think about the emotional whiplash of this day. In one breath, he is laughing with the Queen of the Netherlands and demanding a bronze statue on the internet.
Yeah.
But in the next breath, he is out on the pitch, collapsing in tears, because he explicitly dedicated the match to Jairzinho Peter.
Yeah. For those unaware, Jairzinho Peter was a fellow goalkeeper for the Curacao national team. He tragically passed away a few years prior during a national team trip to Haiti.
He was there at the very beginning of this impossible startup journey.
He was.
Room told the media, I think he was there. I felt him beside me again. And I'm certain he was with me today.
Wow.
He carried the ghost of his friend with him to the finish line. You go from the peak comedy of Reddit to the profound, grounding grief of mourning a lost brother.
It really grounds the entire narrative, because this wasn't just a point in a soccer tournament group stage.
No, not at all.
It was the ultimate realization of the dream that Patrick Kluivert pitched on a phone call back in 2015. For a nation of 150,000 people to hold their own against a South American powerhouse, it validates the long flights across the Atlantic, the solitary paddle sessions, the brutal 7-1 losses, literally everything.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what does this intricate web of stats, psychology, and tragedy mean for you, the listener?
There's a lot to pull from this.
I think there are a few core takeaways that transcend sports. First, the undeniable advantage of isolation. Sometimes being completely removed from the traditional exhausting systems of your industry gives you the clarity to hyper-focus on what actually matters.
Furthermore, it highlights the immense power of diaspora motivation. Room's connection to his father's homeland provided a resilient, bulletproof motivation that no massive club paycheck ever could.
It allowed them to survive the crucible of failure.
Exactly.
And finally, it proves that unconventional preparation can lead to historic greatness if your focus is pure. Rewiring your brain on a tiny racket court might seem crazy to the outside world, but if it prepares you for the chaos of your specific moment, the unconventional becomes genius.
It really forces us to entirely challenge our conventional ideas of what it takes to prepare for success at the highest level.
It really does. It leaves you with something profound to ponder about the nature of human potential.
Yeah.
We are so conditioned to think a person's entire legacy is defined by their everyday job, their standard career trajectory, or like a lifetime of consistent accolades.
But maybe that's the wrong framework entirely. Legacy can be incredibly concentrated. It doesn't have to be stretched out over decades.
Exactly. Sometimes greatness isn't about being the absolute best in the world every single day of your life.
Right.
Sometimes greatness is just about finding the one stage and the one 90-minute window where you simply refuse to be beaten, where you stand in front of an overwhelming army, look at the chaos, and decide they aren't getting past you today.
That's powerful.
It makes you wonder how many other hidden heroes are out there right now, currently unemployed, training in the shadows, just waiting for their 90 minutes to change history.